So it's been more than a few whole months at this point since we've heard any kind of rumors or new information from the long-awaited Metroid Prime Trilogy coming to the Nintendo Switch, and in today's video we have to talk about a gaming journalist who is clearly stating that this game is finished and Nintendo is just simply waiting to release it. What's up, nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As I mentioned, guys, we're talking about Metroid Prime Trilogy today, and that is because we have a new report from a credible gaming journalist who has successfully predicted multiple other games before they are announced. And while he typically has the best track record with Microsoft, as he is very in the know with developers on that side of the industry, he has also successfully predicted a number of different Nintendo games and Switch games specifically. And in a recent interview or a recent podcast that he has behind a paywall, he actually did go on record saying that Nintendo is sitting on Metroid Prime Trilogy and it is done, but there's some quality assurance measures that haven't been quite completed on it yet, but Nintendo just simply has this thing ready to go. And if you guys have seen any of my other previous videos around this topic, I have always said that I believe that Metroid Prime Trilogy most likely is done and it will just simply be released 6 to 9 months before Metroid Prime 4 comes out, as I don't think Nintendo will put a major new installment in the Prime franchise without having the newer fans who did not get a chance to play through 1 through 3 back on the Wii and GameCube. I don't simply think that Nintendo is going to forget about those fans and not give them the access to play the titles of 1 through 3. But the first thing I want to do is read through this exact article so we can get the quote straight from Jeff Grubb himself, and then kind of dissect what I think that means and when we might potentially see an eventual release for Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Switch. Hopping over to Nintendo Life, we've got an update on the long-rumored Metroid Prime Trilogy remaster that's supposedly headed to the Nintendo Switch. According to proven industry insider and VentureBeat journalist Jeff Grubb, the development of the Switch version has already been completed, and it's now just a matter of Nintendo finding the right time to release it. On this week's episode of the Giant Bomb Show, the source of the latest update said the video game giant is waiting for the best moment to reveal and release the trilogy, with the pandemic still causing some problems along with the delay of Metroid Prime 4. Here's exactly what Jeff had to say, thanks VGC. The game is done and Nintendo is holding it. Whether or not Nintendo releases it now or later depends on other factors. I think the game is sitting in their pocket for whenever Nintendo decides it's the right time. And Nintendo has done this a lot recently, so it's not unusual. It's not a sign of some bad thing happening. It's not a sign of lack of faith in Metroid. Nintendo can afford it to sit on it, and that's how they're treating it. I think a big problem for Nintendo for quite some time during the pandemic was QA. I think Nintendo was focusing its quality assurance resources on 1 or 2 other big projects at a time, and that meant that some games that were basically finished were just sitting on the side while they had their lockdown secure QA processes focused on 1 or 2 more important games. Japan is still dealing with these issues, so I don't think those processes are going to open up anytime soon. The other factor for Metroid Prime Trilogy is that it's definitely going to be a marketing beat for Metroid Prime 4, almost certainly. So right now we're getting Metroid Dread this year, and then I would imagine that Prime Trilogy is something they'll release close to the release of Metroid Prime 4, whenever that is. Back in 2019, the Game Informer senior editor at the time, Imran Khan, said the trilogy collection for the Switch had been long done, and also hinted how there was more Metroid stuff to anticipate. This was followed by a Swedish retailer listing the trilogy in May last year. More recently, the former lead designer on all 3 Metroid Prime games shared their own thoughts about the trilogy coming to the Switch and felt like it was unlikely to happen. This response didn't go down well with some of the people in the Metroid community. So there's obviously a ton of things to unpack from what we just read through there, and the first thing I want to attack is kind of that there's going to be naysayers on this video that say, obviously we've already heard from the Retro employee that used to be the lead design on the original Prime games. He said that it's most likely not going to happen just because it's actually going to be a hard task to port, and it's not going to be something that is just a simple up-res and move it to the Switch. And to that, I would say this guy has not been employed with Retro for over 10 years at the time of his statement, and it's not really something we have to go off of as him being in the know with what Nintendo is actually doing. And again, my opinion differs heavily, because if Nintendo wants to put some money behind something and really support a franchise, they will do it regardless of how hard of an effort it is. I mean, Skyward Sword HD is a perfect example of that, with all of the quality of life improvements and just mapping the controls to a button's layout is a incredibly hard task to do, and you can't tell me that Nintendo didn't put in a ton of dollars and work in order to be able to pull that off. So as far as my personal opinion on this matter, I definitely think that Metroid Prime Trilogy makes sense to bring it to the Switch, and I even think it's totally possible that we see all of the bells and whistles included, like a smooth 60 frames per second performance-wise on the Switch. I also think maybe Nintendo will be extra generous and, similar to Skyward Sword, give us both the option for traditional button controls, how they were on the GameCube with Prime 1 and 2, and then also give us the option for motion controls, which obviously was the only option for Prime Corruption. And so I do think that that could be something that we see, and I would love to have the ability to switch back and forth from the Joy-Cons. It's kind of like what I'm doing with Skyward Sword HD right now, and then when I want to play with a traditional controller, have that option as well. And then I definitely think that Nintendo wouldn't put this game out. Maybe they do have those QA issues like Jeff Grubb was mentioning, but I still don't think that Nintendo would release this game like a year and a half or more before Metroid Prime 4 is ready to come out, because I think this is a big marketing push for Metroid Prime 4. We're already seeing Dread get all of these dollars thrown at it. I mean, it's in the Switch OLED promotional material. It's releasing on the same day as a Switch revision, so Nintendo obviously has bigger sights for Metroid as a long-term Nintendo franchise that will really be a blockbuster seller going forward, and they're trying to get it there. So Nintendo is now doing their part. It's time for the fans to do theirs and go out and support them, and I know the hardcore fans always do, but I'll be really curious to see if now with the Switch install base and how many, new fans have been exposed to Metroid, just whether it's through Smash Bros or seeing, videos online of classic Metroids, and now all of the hype and talk around Metroid Dread from new consumers even that were not, talking about Metroid at any point in time in the past. I think this is going to be a really exciting thing to see. But again, my personal prediction for Metroid Prime Trilogy would be that we will see this thing release 6 to 9 months before Prime 4, and I think it could be something where this is like a fall game of 2022, and then Prime 4 comes out whenever it's ready in probably like the Q1 or Q2 of 2023. Now that's just like my personal prediction. We really don't know where Prime 4 is actually at in its development cycle right now. We do know that Retro is still hiring a lot of lead designers and some really key roles, and not even that long ago, like we're talking like a few months back, they still had job listings available. So I don't think this thing is like in the home stretch right now. Like they're probably still in the nitty gritty of getting the game finished. So my personal prediction would be, a big game like Prime 4, it's not going to be sold next to something like a Breath of the Wild 2. And if we can't expect Breath of the Wild 2 to come out in either middle or late 2022, like Nintendo is clearly aiming to release that game in that window, well, then I think that the early part of 2023 makes the most sense for Prime 4, and then at that point 6 to 9 months before that is probably when we can expect Metroid Prime Trilogy. But that's my thoughts on everything, guys. I do want to hear from you if you think that Jeff Grubb has this one kind of some inside information and he's accurate, or if you think that this is just more his speculation and you're not holding your breath for Metroid Prime Trilogy. And then also let me know if you will pick this up if we do end up seeing it release. If you're a big Metroid fan like I am, I'm sure you will, but I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around what your thoughts are with this entire Metroid Prime Trilogy scenario. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below, hit the like button on your way out if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. That's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.